We're going to be talking things like, is Trey Lance proving to be the answer at quarterback, and more right after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3, dominate.
Welcome back, everybody, to the channel. We've got a fun one today. And like I said, we've got a lot of OTA talk, a lot of rumor talk. And, it's the offseason for the 49ers. But first, John, how you doing, my man?
Man, I'm pumped. You know, the schedule came out. We've got stuff to talk about with film, quarterback stuff. That's going to be there all the freaking time with this franchise, no matter what happens. But it's fun because we have hope, which you should. The 49ers are a really good team. But now you know what the schedule looks like. There's some issues with the schedule, but the map has been set. The journey that the Niners need to go on to get that next ring, it is laid out. And so this is a good time. Really do enjoy this time. It's a little calm before the storm, but pumped to be here with you today, as always, Rohan.
Hey, man, I appreciate your time, and it's going to be a fun one. Always appreciate all the hashtag CCs in the chat, Countdown Chapman. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. John, let's get it started, though. Let's go. Before we get into the schedule, really look at how the 49ers might earn that 6th Lombardi. Let's look first at OTAs, all the draft kind of stuff. And we got to start with what's on our minds. Kyle Shanahan saying Trey Lance is in his best shape ever. And this is obviously coming after he didn't necessarily deny Mayoko's comments about Sam Darnold being one of the most talented throwers of the football. So we've got two different storylines at quarterback. What do you make of it?
Man, I really think that the opportunity is right there for Trey. The only thing that I think could stop that is an early Brock Purdy emergence from slumber with this injury. Because, you know, my whole thing is, and the 49ers have been huge on this, it's a meritocracy. Whoever earns it is going to be there. We saw it last year with quarterback 3 when Brock Purdy beat out Nate Sudfeld, and they cut Sudfeld despite the $2 million cap hit that they would have, but he got picked up, so that wasn't there, whatever. But you earn your stripes. Now,
yeah.
The issue is they're not clearly handing the backup job to Trey Lance. So guess what? Sam Darnold is a capable quarterback. He has not been good in the pros. He's had a couple good minor stretches, but even during those stretches, not elite by any stretch. He has been surrounded by terrible franchise, the Jets, then the Panthers, now here. Should Sam Darnold flourish? Yes, he should. If there's any system, it's this system, but it's going to be a competition. So I don't really put much stock into this whole, oh, he's a good thrower of the ball or whatever. Yeah, he is. He's a very good thrower of the ball, Sam Darnold. We got to see it. And the only thing that I think is going to stop Trey Lance from starting week 1 is if Brock Purdy's back healthy. I don't expect that. But I think that's really the only thing. And if he loses a competition to Darnold, then so be it. You know, that's the way the cookie crumbles, man. I think he will win that competition, but Darnold does have a lot more experience.
No, I agree. And I mean, that's the two different factors, right? Experience, potential, and also the different storylines we hear this offseason. And I mean, obviously, we've heard a lot of posturing towards the 49ers trying to anticipate Sam Darnold to be the quarterback. And it's come from a variety of sources. It's not just one, it's come from a variety of people coming out and talking, people you don't necessarily expect to at times, and things like that. And so you do truly question, how much Sam Darnold plays into this. But you're right. It seems like both are going to get an opportunity. And at least to begin OTAs, it seems like both are on the path the 49ers want them to be. Mm-hmm. Again, there's a huge question at quarterback, and we'll get to some of the scheduling stuff in a bit. But I do think that right now, it's an interesting situation, understanding both have, it seems like, at least impressed early on, leading to a solid competition in the second phase of the offseason.
Yeah, and again, I think there's two separate I don't know, trajectories this could go. The first is Brock Purdy's not back to start week 1, okay? So you have to deal with that, and that's Trey versus Sam, Trey versus Sam. The second path is, okay, let's say Brock Purdy does come back early. You're talking about those dates. We still have not had the very first checkup from his surgery. That's the first week of June. So we're still 2 weeks away from the very first checkup. Now, everybody could say, oh, he's way ahead of schedule. But guess what? Has not had his first checkup. So all of that is just speculation, conjecture. We don't know. Yeah, we saw the waves. We saw the high fives. He's going through drills with a towel. Not one checkup. So we will know more in 2 weeks. And if that's when they start coming out, oh, he's ahead of schedule, what they could be ready by training camp, things like that come out, great. Then you go to the other trajectory. And that's now it's a 3 quarterback kind of stable. And that's when things could happen. Everybody that was pushing this narrative that Trey Lance was going to get traded before the draft, Trey Lance was going to get traded during free agency, Trey Lance was going to get traded during the draft. I just kept saying, man, there's no way because you don't know when Brock's going to be back. Now, once that changes, I still don't believe Trey should be traded. Doesn't mean they won't do it. I want to see what he can do, man. Even if it's for 2 weeks, I want to see what Trey can do. So I'm hoping he gets a chance under center during the regular season. I really do. And I'm still betting that Trey Lance will be the starting quarterback week 1. I could be wrong, but I think the only thing that could disrupt that again is if Brock Purdy's back and healthy.
And I agree with you. Right now, I do think he's the favorite to start week 1. And it's not only just us believing it. I mean, we've heard it from Matt Barrows. We've heard it even some sprinkles from Matt Mayoko, right? And you understand that Kyle Shanahan, it might be the one comment that not a lot of people remember. Kyle Shanahan gave out the timeline. He said
Yeah.
6 to 8 months. And I mean, the realistic factor might be right in the middle at 7 months, and that means that first 4 weeks or first how many ever weeks of the season, you don't expect him to be back, even though he'll be practicing by then. And so, yeah, you're going to. It seems likelier than not you see somebody other than Brock Purdy at the helm week 1, and this is going to lead me to my next question because it's not only about the quarterbacks, but it's about the environment the 49ers face week 1 in the Pittsburgh Steelers. The schedule came out. The 49ers have an interesting schedule for sure, and it seems like they've got a couple of winnable games early on their schedule, but they start off on the road in an environment like Pittsburgh against a strong defense. How do you feel about that matchup?
It's rough, man. I'll just be Pittsburgh's just such a great place and great team, great defense, young quarterback, amazing coaches. My number one coach in the NFL is Mike Tomlin. If I could pick a team, pick a coach to start my franchise, Mike Tomlin's number one, even over Shanahan. I got Shanahan top 4, but I love me some Mike Tomlin. So this is a rough game, but it's going to be a fun game. We're going to be there, 40 hours rush road trip. We're going to be out there partying and all that stuff beforehand and tailgate and all that. But this is a difficult game. I'm doing an episode, man, next week, maybe next couple of days, where I rank the strength of schedule for each one of these games. And, the interesting thing is I have this game in the middle just because the Niners aren't coming off a short week, which they are so many times. So I have this as the 7th, right there in the middle game. But it's going to be fun, and it could go either way because 49ers start slow, no doubt about that. Almost every single season besides 2019. But if they could kick this up, start week 1 with a win, that would be a nice comforting feeling for the 49ers faithful for sure.
No, definitely. And I mean, I think week 1's got a lot of implications because if you do start off week 1 with a comfortable win, excuse me, if you do start off week 1 with a comfortable win, these provide some sort of comfortability because you come back, you face the Rams in an environment that should feel like home. Then you come home and then you face the Giants. And the point is, you've got the Rams, the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Cowboys. 4 straight weeks of
Yeah.
what are essentially home games. And some of those matchups are obviously tough, the Giants and Cowboys being playoff teams last year. But when you look at that first stretch, it's really the biggest challenge is you start on the road on week one. Not necessarily the opponent itself, but you're starting on the road week one. And so to me, if you can overcome that challenge, if whoever starts week one ends up having a good game because they're under the highest amount of pressure, I think it bodes well for the 49ers. And I mean, I don't think it's only the quarterback. I think the kicker, second guy with the highest most pressure right now, in my opinion, would also be under some good pressure week one, especially if it's a close leverage situation.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And it's funny because when the schedule comes out every year, I'm always like, but we always start out on the road. How much is that, the ownership in Kyle Shanahan saying, "Hey, we don't want early home games because that sun on the it's just too much to bear, the way the stadium's built and all that stuff." And so like it makes sense that you start off on the road. Your first home game's Thursday night football. You don't have a home game with an early kickoff until, good Lord, you've got to go all the way until, man, the Bucks game, I think is the first one. Is that right? No, we don't have one
I
early
don't
game
think we
kickoff.
have one. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the
because
so
yeah, when we're at home, it'll never. I don't think ever be early kickoff.
it's so people get upset about the schedule with the rest and the travel and the 5 separate trips to the East Coast. Those are correct to be upset about. However, a lot of this should be on ownership. And I'm a very big, I'm not against the Yorks at all. I think they've done a hell of a job, post once Shanahan showed up, they finally learned their lessons. But there's a big reason why the schedule's the way it is. And it's because the Niners literally petitioned the NFL, don't let us have early home kickoffs because the sun, the way we built our stadium just sucks. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, but trust me, it's a factor. 0 home early kickoffs. I guarantee I would be willing to bet the farm we are the only team in the NFL that has that going on. I would bet everything. 31 other teams, I would almost guarantee it.
So even on the road, do we not have, or
We have
maybe
a
we have a
lot of
few?
early kickoffs
Yeah,
on the
we've got a
East
few. We've got a
Coast.
few.
That's
Yeah.
like the worst thing. When we play at these tailgates and all this stuff, like it's early. The good news is the time change. So like Pittsburgh, it's a 10 a.m. kickoff here, but 1 there. But you've got that. You've got Jacksonville. You've got the Commanders. You have 3 separate trips to the East Coast with early kickoffs. That's a killer.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, when you look at the schedule, I do want to ask you a couple of things. One, where do you think is like a series of games maybe where the 49ers are at an advantage, like somewhat of a breather? And then the opposite, what do you think is the toughest series maybe on the slate?
The only this is going to sound blasphemous. I think the only time the 49ers have even a smidge of advantage is the Philly game. And that's the toughest game on our schedule because
How
we got a
so?
mini bye right before that. Or you've got the Thursday game on the road, Thanksgiving against Seattle. Then you've got 11 days, right? Philly has to go Kansas City versus Buffalo, then us. And
Mm,
so the only advantage that I could see, and it's a small one, is that game. But still, we're flying all the way across, all the way across. Like there are very few days, and there's a reason. The Sharp analytics came out. Warren Sharp does a hell of a job, Sharp Football, and the 49ers have the largest disadvantage, -20 rest days compared to everybody else in the NFL. Like it's not a nice schedule, man. It's not nice. So if you're looking for advantages, you gotta get that magnifying glass out because there's just not that many there. It's not there.
no, you're right. Look at the schedule overall. You saw, I think, a week ago where it was posted how the 49ers have the second most travel miles in the NFL, and now you understand why. You're going essentially, you know how in the past we've had a couple of games where it's like East Coast where they stack 2 games up. I don't think there's much of that this year. The Steelers are on their own on that coast. I mean, maybe Cleveland and Minnesota together,
That's it.
those
That's
two
it.
road games. But you have a bye week, you go to the Jaguars, you come back. Then you go to the link after Seattle, come back. Then you go to Washington in week 17 after
Ugh.
home game and come back. So it's a good amount of travel. And so for me, when I point out maybe the easiest and toughest slates, it's I think although I don't necessarily know how the 49ers fare in these four games, I look at the Rams to week 2 to week 5, Rams, Giants, Cardinals, Cowboys, just as some solace understanding that you're at home for essentially four games
Yeah.
before the mighty travel. And maybe I'm pointing this out more because I think these are coming in similar to must win games because the 49ers are always good in the second half of the schedule. I think in this schedule, you might need to be better off in the first half to at least absolve of some potential losses that you could face in the second half against some tougher opponents. But like you pointed out, that Eagles game, I think that that is a part of our toughest stretch. When you go Seattle, Philly, Seattle, I think that
Yeah.
that's a tough stretch because you're going to the link on the road on Thursday in week 12. So it's off a short week. And while you get some extra rest and then the Eagles are facing a tough opponent, it's obviously in the link. Sorry, you're first at Lumen Field, then you're in the link. And so I think that those are two tough games. Then you come back off a slugfest and you're facing Seattle Seahawks. You're probably one of your top division opponents this year once again.
The one thing that I can say again, like you can look at things and it just looks bad because yeah, that Seattle, Philly, Seattle stretch is terrible. But whenever you look at Philly, they've got a worse slate of games than we do, and it's not even close. I mean, again, they go Kansas City, Buffalo, 49ers, Cowboys, Seahawks in a 5 game stretch. Like that's brutal. Then you look at the Seattle Seahawks. And with us too, they've got Philly, 49ers, Dallas, like the all three of the top teams in the NFC, and I think those are the three top teams probably. Whatever order you want to put them in, but 49ers and Eagles, I think, are in a tier of their own. And then you have Seattle that a lot of people think close space with the draft. We'll have to see how it plays out, but definitely looks like they did a really good job. Those three teams. And for us, the Niners in the NFC West, you got to put Seattle as number one. Like, I know everybody wants to talk about the Eagles game. I would much rather beat Seattle on the road than I would the Eagles on the road. Like, if somebody's like, dude, you can win one, I'm taking Seattle win, right? You got to win the division first. We swept them last year, 3 games. We lost to Philly, but that was a weird game in the NFC Championship. Lost our quarterback, second drive. So, like, I don't know. I know everybody's talking about Philly, and I get it. I don't give a damn about Philly. I really don't. I want to win the division. I care about Seattle. Rams are a joke. Cardinals are a joke. Those Seattle games are everything for me this year.
I think so too. Think yeah, like you said, both of them are vital games, are vital games. And when you look at the schedule, those are two games where I think it's tough. I don't know if you made a schedule prediction. I haven't done any of those videos yet, but if so, what are you currently thinking for the 49ers?
Vegas has the 49ers at 10.5. That's the over-under, right? So 10 or 11 wins is kind of what Vegas sees. We're favored in every game except for the Eagles game. So, technically you should be 16-1. Not how it works. So I think a 12-5 would be pretty accurate. That's kind of what I'm going for, just because there's going to be some of these early kickoff East Coast games. Like, I don't think the Chargers are a good team. I wouldn't be shocked at all if they win that game. The Niners at a huge disadvantage. So you look at the two football teams and you're like, oh man, Niners should blow this game out. But we've had these games in the past, losing to the Colts, losing to the Commanders, losing to Miami when they were bad. Like, these type of games happen in the NFL because it's hard to get up for that many weeks in a row, especially when you're at a disadvantage. So just off the top of my head, I'd say 12-5. I'd be very happy with that. I think that wins the division. The NFC is weak. The NFC West is even weaker. So 12-5 is my initial reaction.
Hey, that's high praise, and I think 12-5 probably earns you a top 2 seed in
For
the
sure.
conference, maybe even the 1 seed, just based on how this year should go. So yeah, I mean that's a pretty high remark for the 49ers, and I think they'd be happy if they went 12-5 with this slate given to them ahead.
Yeah, and again, you got to look last year, the number 1 seed got 14-3. Niners were the second seed with 13-4. Minnesota was 13-4. But I think some of the bad teams in the NFL and the NFC, not named the Arizona Cardinals and Rams, got a lot better. And so I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of improvement there. But yeah, 12-5, that's a good record. It really, really is. 11-6 is a good record. Once you get into that 10-7, then it's like, all right, you got to have some things break your way. And it's weird to say that at 10-7, 12-5, that's only 2 games. But you look at last year for the 49ers, only 2 games. The entire season were determined by 3 or less points. Niners blew people out last year. They handled their business, especially late in the year. Can they
Right.
pick up where they left off there?
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest question for sure, right? Can they pick up where they left off? And to start it off, I want to talk about some things that we've seen recently. I mean, we've heard Steve Wilkes talk, we've heard Kyle Shanahan talk, we've heard a couple of things about a couple of different players. Let's start it with Drake Jackson. Drake
Ooh.
Jackson's a guy who, you know, he's a guy who's right now being tasked to do a lot, right? Or at least being tasked to have a bigger role this year. Understanding the 49ers didn't draft an edge rusher before the 5th round in Robert Beal, which, overall means 49ers right now think Drake Jackson can have a bigger role. It seems like he's projected to start right now. What are you thinking on the Drake Jackson front after we've heard that, some of the weight things are looking better than you want.
Yeah, weight and strength, right? Steve Wilkes was asked what he saw whenever he watched Drake Jackson, and man, before the question finished, he just goes inconsistency. like, I mean, but it's a rook, and he's a young rook at that. He was very young whenever he came in. I think he was drafted at 21. He's 22 now. Will be 23 in the upcoming year. So young, athletic. You just got to add strength and size so that he can maintain what he brings to the table on a consistent basis. So I do think Drake Jackson starts week 1. I see that. Who else would beat him out? Kerry Hyder Jr. maybe. Maybe you could talk Cleveland Farrell. Maybe somebody not on the roster. But for me, I think Drake Jackson will be out there early. The good news is there's a lot of guys behind him that you like, but he needs snaps. That's what the Niners need from that second edge spot is quality snaps. Not the sacks won't determine if Drake Jackson has a good second year. That's not what I care about. Can he get to 600 plus snaps and be consistent without being, a target for the defenses? That's what I want. We need consistency from that because you lost O'Menihue. You lost the starter that we've had there for back-to-back years with goodness, his name's right there on the edge of my I feel so bad. Came
You're
over from the
talking about
Reds.
Ebicom?
Yes, thank you. Goodness. Rohan for the win. You lost those guys. So quality snaps is what the Niners need at that spot.
Yeah. And I mean, overall, like you said, quality snaps necessary. You look at Edge. Right now, I think there are 3 just 100% guarantees based on contract or whatever that are going to be on the 53. That's Drake Jackson, Nick Bosa, and Cleveland Farrell. Everybody else, I think, is fighting for a spot, and some have a better chance than others, but I don't think there's any more guarantees. And so when you look at that group, I think right now Drake Jackson's got to be slotted in to start. And so that's why it's good when you hear, oh, he's been in the building every day. He has gained a lot of weight. He's looking to improve his game. And so right now it's early in the offseason. You've got a good portion of time. And the 49ers, I mean, obviously they do a lot of things. You can utilize him as a situational pass rusher. You can utilize him in multiple different ways. And he's going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities. You're working alongside Nick Bosa. You're working alongside Javon Kinlaw and Ark Armstead. So I think Drake Jackson, I think there's a lot of opportunity for him. It's just how do the 49ers utilize him, and how does he respond now to the 17-game season in an increased role?
Yeah, it's just consistency, right? Again, what did Wilkes say? Inconsistency. You got to be consistent. You got to earn the right to rush the passer. How do you do that? First and second down, you got to stop the run, maintain your gaps. The main reason, like if you go back to the Raiders game last year, which was incredible, overtime, whatever else, a lot of those big plays that Jared Stidham made was because Drake Jackson did not maintain his rush leverage through the gap and allowed the quarterback out of the pocket. Guess what happened right after that game? Healthy scratch there on out. He never played a game again. So, like, if you're looking for a culprit, there's a lot more than just him. But the Niners saw, like, look, man, this dude it makes us vulnerable as a defense. We gotta. He's not dressing anymore. 5 straight games he was inactive down the playoff stretch. How does he respond? How does he respond? That's what I want to see.
No, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. He's one of the guys. Another guy that obviously Steve Wilkes unpromptedly mentioned, Javon Kinlaw. Now, we've heard Javon Kinlaw's name come up a couple of times in the offseason about the shape that he's been in, not only this offseason, but also in past off seasons. How much are you buying the hype right
I'll say this: managed expectations are so important. Okay, and with the Niners and Javon Kinlaw, whatever pressure has been there, that's gone. With the signing of Javon Hargrave, you got Eric Armstead, team captain, Walter Payton Man of the Year 3 times in a row, nominee, whatever. Like, he just gets to come in and just be a guy. He doesn't have to be the starter. The expectations are bottomed out. Now, he's not going anywhere because it's a guaranteed rookie contract, so you would lose money if you cut him. Like, that's not happening. He just gets to come in and play. Nothing is put on him as far as he has to manage. You got to be Buckner. No. You're the number 3 on a defensive tackle rotation now. We get to kind of see what happens. Hopefully he balls out, and he's amazing human, and his work ethic is top notch. His story's amazing. All these things are great about him. You just got to stay healthy. Stay healthy. And again, that first half in the NFC Championship was bad film. Outside of that, he didn't put up a lot of bad film. Second half of the NFC Championship played really well. You don't see a lot of those clips on Twitter, so people don't know that. But you go back and you watch the second half of the NFC Championship game against the Eagles, Kinlaw played well. So manage the expectations. He doesn't have to come in and be all world anything. Just come in and be a role player. Be a run stuffer. And if he can do that, I think he'll be able to get a decent second-year contract with another team. I doubt it's going to be with the Niners, but I'm rooting on this kid. I'm rooting on this human. I think that he'll be able to come in and provide very quality snaps. But again, he doesn't have to be the guy. If he's getting 20 snaps a game, that's perfect for him. Manage the load. Make sure that knee's healthy. That's a huge win. Huge win.
100% agree. You said manage the load, make sure that needs healthy. Unfortunately, that hasn't been reality for Kinlaw this throughout his career. But the goal isn't looking at the future now for Javon Kinlaw. The goal is just trying to maximize the production you can this year. And he's obviously not going to be placed in no high leverage role. They signed Javon Hargrave for that specific reason. They don't want Javon Kinlaw to start. They want another guy who they believe can be capable of stringing together consistent performances, and Hargrave does that at a high level.
He doesn't miss games, man. He plays a
No,
lot. Him and
no, he does
Armstead are
not.
like the 2 Iron Men of defensive tackles in the NFL, which is cool.
And I mean, the 49ers got both, and that's great for a team who normally suffer through a ton of injuries. We've seen them at the defensive line position as well in the past, and so it's a good thing for the 49ers. But Kinlaw's a guy who, can see the field in situational areas, and to me, it starts with the training camp work and it's just the offseason work, and it's a good sign. Am I going to buy the hype? Not just yet. We've heard
Right.
it obviously before. What I really want to see is him getting into one-on-one pass rushing situations.
Hmm.
Those one-on-one pass rushing drills, that's something that will truly tell you, are they trusting him enough, trusting his body enough to put him out there? Because last year he was exempt from them. He got maybe 2 reps the entirety of camp because they were building him back up. They don't want him to put him in that situation, and so they don't put him in that specific drill. That's what I want to see. I just want to
Yeah.
see, him being available in everything. He's got a full healthy offseason. Obviously, that's been really a first for Javon Kinlaw in his career, so that's the good sign. But want to see it put all together before we make a judgment.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And again, like, he doesn't have to be the guy anymore. And that's where I think people kind of forget. Like, he could come in and be a role guy. We got to see it. And the thing is this, the Niners are not dependent upon him. They were last year. But in every single offseason and training camp, it's going to happen again this year. It's happened every single year that you've been a Niners fan. Anybody has. They stack injuries at the same position. Last year, going into week 1, we had 5 defensive tackles injured. 5 going into week 1. Now, it's going to be a different position. It was running back 2 years ago. It was center 3 years ago. It was tight end. And it's just always cornerback. Right? We always do this. I don't think it's going to hit the defensive tackles again. And if he could come in and be the number 3 guy, that's a place where he could be successful. There's a role for that in the NFL. Is he ever going to live up to the number 13 overall pick? I doubt it. But I do think he's getting a second contract. If people want to be like, oh, man, it's a huge bust, whatever else. 11 out of 32 players that were drafted that year with Kinlaw got their 5th-year option, picked up. That's a third. Now, we got Kinlaw and Ayuk. Ayuk hit. That's a 50% success rate. We're over the NFL average. And if he gets another second-year contract, the second-term contract, which he will, that account as a comp pick, probably only be a 5th or 6th rounder. But it's the way the Niners have built. It's the way they will continue to build. Has Kinlaw lived up to the hype? Not even close. But it's not like he's a complete wasted player. I don't see it that way. I understand social media does, but the film doesn't say that.
Exactly, right? The film doesn't necessarily say that. And so we'll definitely see how the defensive tackle position goes behind the 2 starters. We've got a lot of reps, or we've got a lot of players that deserve playing time, right? I mean, even guys like T.Y. McGill, who got re-signed. We've got a lot of players in that room who deserve playing time. Let's see where Kinlaw fits in the picture. If he can crack the top 10 right now, seems like signs are looking good. Michael Hare here with a question. Anyone on the edge of opposite of Bosa will be a target for opposing teams. I pointed out earlier how, double teams likely go into those 3. Bosa, Hargrave, or Ark Armstead. How integral is that opposite position, and what did we learn last year from that position?
I think one of the things that I do like with Bill being added is I don't want an every down end. I am fine that spot opposite of Bosa to being specialized. You have a run stuffer, you got a pass rusher, and you rotate those guys. You've got 2 kind of with Robert Bill Jr., edge out of Georgia, and with Austin Bryant. I think those 2 guys, they're just speed edge rushers. That's all that they have to do. And so then you've got your stud run stuffers, which I think Cleveland Farrell's going to be that. I think Kerry Hyder Jr. can be that. And then you've got Drake Jackson that's kind of your do-it-all guy. He can be a do-it-all guy. We haven't seen it yet, but he can be the way he's built. His athleticism can be. So I just want specialized, man. What down is it? What's the down and distance? I want that guy out there for certain roles. And so the opposite spot's the biggest question mark on this team, even bigger than right tackle, in my opinion, the defensive end opposite of Bosa. But we've got a pretty damn good defensive line group. Whenever you've got 3 studs out of 4 out there, with Armstead, Bosa, and Hargrave, you're going to be all right. You just need somebody to step up, man. Just somebody take that step. Come on, guys.
Man, I agree. You've got a group of guys. You had 2 proven guys, obviously, exit the building, in Omenahue and Samson Ebukam. Now, I don't know necessarily how high we can place expectations, but you hope that there's a rotation that now can step up, just like Philly. Philly, you're asking younger guys now to fill older guys' role. See some guys here step up. Jackson, who we just talked about, among the group. Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, one guy we haven't talked about, we've been talking D-line, Kalia Davis, who was drafted last year, redshirt year, tore his ACL, working out the combine. Who knows where that guy fits in? I mean, it's going to be the defensive tackle group, but you turned your biggest weakness to start the year into the biggest strength. The number 1 position on this team is defensive tackle now. And so that, again, when your defensive tackles are better, your end gets an easier job. When your linebackers are great, my first, coaching linebackers, the thing I always tell those guys repeatedly, you make the defensive linemen right. You make them right. He can't see behind him. So if he goes wrong, I don't give a damn. You clean up where he misses. And we got Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, two of the best in the bunch. I think both are top 5 backers. Fred Warner's number 1, but I'm telling you, Dre Greenlaw, that he played like a top 5 guy last year, guaranteed. I mean, he was incredible. So if you could keep that, there are ways to mitigate and help that position. But man, what if they don't have to? What if that defensive end opposite Bosa actually steps their game up? You get quality snaps there, whoever the hell it's going to be. I want it to be Drake. I think everybody does. But man, if that happens, this was the number 1 defense in the NFL by a large margin, points and yards. No reason why they can't do that again or even be better.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. And I mean, overall, like you said, Kalia Davis, he's a guy who I think's got to be on the outlook. And when you look at Kalia Davis, he provides you something where you can really test out some versatility. Ark Armstead, you kick him outside, you've got a lot of guys at D tackle that could play. You've got a lot of guys at D tackle that have potential or that can play. You can kick Ark Armstead outside and utilize one more of those D tackle guys. And while Armstead, I believe, has said that possibility hasn't been talked about yet, I think as you get along this offseason, understand your depth at D tackle is stronger than your depth at DN.
So strong, man.
Yeah, maybe those conversations come up again. Terradome here brings up how Omenihu have become single-digit sack guys. We want double-digit sack guys to complement Bosa. I think that's where you see Armstead and or Hargrave fit in, especially after Hargrave just had double-digit sacks on a defensive line where 3 other players got double-digit sacks as well.
Yeah, it's a group, man, that they're going to get there. And I don't like the sack numbers. That's so hard to replicate. The pressures,
Right.
the how, like, again, you look at Armstead, his sack numbers were awful. But I remember the 49ers released their top 10 plays of the year, and I think there were like 3 defensive plays on there. All 3 of the defensive plays on there, you had Armstead causing the bad pass that led to the interception or the fumble or whatever else. So, like, sacks, I get it. We buy into that probably more than we should, but the pressures, the impact plays, the move in the pocket, it's a good unit, man. Oh, it's a good unit. And it starts up front. It has started up front. It's going to, even though we switched defensive coordinators, 49ers defense is going to continue to drive this team.
It always will. I mean, that's the thing. It always will. And that leads me to Slick's question here. Do you think they should still sign a veteran free agent? You look at the edge market, very talented edge market still. I mean, the top guys we were talking about 2 months ago are still the top guys on the board now. And Yannick Ngakoue, Leonard Floyd, I think Robert Quinn might be out there. A lot of names are out there. What do you think?
I think they're going to hold on to their money. They redid some contracts. They got about $9 million in cap space. I think they sit on that and try to see who comes out in training camp. Now, if nobody steps up or an injury happens to another position, they have the flexibility to trade and or sign one of those guys. But I don't think they're in a rush to. I think they want to see what they got. And if somebody doesn't live up or meet that expectation, then you do that. But the 91-man roster is set because we got that exemption with Alfredo. But I think they're happy with what they have right now. Could they get better? Yeah, in some positions, sure. Is Yannick Ngakoue better than what we have? Yes, he is. He would cost all of the salary cap. You would lose flexibility in season if you had, a key player get injured. And 2, Yannick's pushed himself off of a lot of teams. There's a reason why he's still available. So I don't think they're in a rush to really spend that money, and I don't think they should be, because even if they don't spend it this year, guess what? Rolls over for next year, and the Niners have been really good at that.
I mean, you said it right? I don't think they're in a rush. And right now, I think here's what the 49ers are thinking. You understand where you are as a team. You also want to evaluate the younger guys that you have right now. And I think maybe we see signing closer to mandatory minicamp or right after mandatory minicamp. Why? Every guy that the 49ers are targeting, you know what they can do. You've seen what they can do. I don't think they're too worried about the scheme fit coming in after a month or like a month before training camp or near training camp or whatever. But you understand what they can do. Maybe you take this entire offseason, take the 2-3 weeks to see what your young guys can provide you. get a better understanding before you really take a final outlook at what your roster will be in 2023.
Well, let me ask you this, Rohan. Let's stay on this edge position and let's take some of the top guys out. I want to know, who do you think gets more snaps this year? Let's do Kerry Hyder, Austin Bryant, or Robert Bill Jr. Those three edge guys. So Kerry Hyder Jr., Austin Bryant, or Robert Bill, the rookie. Who do you think steps up from the back end of this roster at that defensive end spot?
That's an interesting one. Now, at the moment, I do believe Hyder would probably make the roster just because of the depth that we have at the end. Although I want to say Robert Beal Jr., I'm going to go with Hyder at one, Beal at two, Austin Bryant at three.
Yeah, I think that hurt Bryant the most when that Bill pick happened because they wanted that clear speed guy. I don't know if they keep two of them. We'll have to see what happens. They might be able to keep Bryant on the practice squad, but Bill,
Yeah,
you can't cut him. You can't. He's not going anywhere.
no, I agree. I think he's a guy now that should be locked in. And I wonder whether the 49ers go lighter at DN this year to absorb the amount of bodies they have at D tackle because they've got I'd say at least six capable guys that can play at D tackle, and even Kerry Hyder could be viewed as the D tackle with the way he plays on the inside at times.
Yeah, they did that last year. Like for the past 5 years, they've kept 6 defensive ends and 5 defensive tackles on their active squad. But that switched. Little over halfway down the year, they switched to keeping 6 defensive tackles and only 5 defensive ends. Kerry Hyder was a part of that, but he was playing inside last year because all the injuries. So, yeah, what are they going to do this year? Do they keep 5 outside, 6 inside? It seems to suggest if you want the best talent, that's probably what I would do. Now, the question is going to be, all right, who are those 5 guys? Bosa, all right, Jackson, they're locks no matter what. Cleveland's a lock. I want to put Bill as a lock. Hyder, that's your 5. That's your 5 right there.
There you go. That's your 5. Yeah, man. Real quick, as we get to the back end of our show, Terradome brings up a great point here. Partying in Vegas, New Year's Eve. John, I know you do a great amount of work into scheduling trips for the fans. Why don't you give a shout out, talk about the schedule that you guys have accumulated thus far this year? Where are you guys heading on going? And what can 49er fans do to sign up for those trips?
Dude, I didn't even ask him to do this. I appreciate you, man. You're the man, Rohan. We've got 6 trips for the 49ers Rush road trip already set aside, working through those details. Tickets will be available tomorrow, okay? So 49ersrushroadtrip.com. That's all you got to do. Just go there. Tomorrow they're going to be up. We've got 6 trips already planned. So week 1 at Pittsburgh. We're doing week 5 home against the Cowboys. I'm going to be at every Cowboys-Niners game. Week 7 Monday Night Football at Minnesota. We've got week 10 Jacksonville going all the way down there November 12th. We're doing the Thanksgiving game, Seattle on Thanksgiving. We're doing a whole Thanksgiving tailgate. We're going to be your family if you're away. The wife and kid, I'm bringing them with me for that one. And then at Arizona week 15. I'm super pumped about that one. Arizona didn't get a game last year. And so those chapters the Arizona party is going to be huge. So those are the 6 games: Pittsburgh, Dallas, Vikings, Jacksonville, Seattle, and Arizona. That's what we got. We'll add some more, but I want to start there. We'll build that out. 49ersrushroadtrip.com. Tailgates, night before parties. We got you. Come party with us. Have a good time.
You heard it here. Obviously, it's a great time whenever John and all organize their trips. I mean, it's a fun tailgate. It's just a fun experience the whole weekend of. So be sure to go check out 49ersroadtrip.com, 49ersrushroadtrip.com. That is tomorrow. I think that, there's a lot of different ways to interact with the 49er Nation. One of the best opportunities here is with John's trip.
And they're all family friendly. That's like the number one, which
Exactly.
is so difficult because you talk to these bars like, hey, I want to rent out your bar Saturday night during one of the most busy times of the year. But also, I want kids in there. And usually that's where the conversation ends. But I believe in building the fan base and community. These are all family friendly events. We're going to have stuff for kids available at all these spots. We're going to have a good time. And we want you to be able to it's a comfortable atmosphere. We're not rowdy, but we have a great time. So come check us out. Come check us out.
No, I definitely agree. And to wrap today's show up, I got to talk about the draft because I don't think we've talked about the draft yet, us two.
Ooh.
And so overall, let's just talk about the class overall. What did you take away from our 2023 NFL draft?
They looked at it like they wanted to build depth at some key positions where they lacked depth. It probably my favorite thing about this draft is the evolution of Shanahan and the type of players they're getting. I think that's most evident at the tight end position. I didn't like the Cameron Latu pick at all. I really didn't. Um, but I think what it demonstrates is they've constantly gone after these superior blockers, Charlie Warner, Dwelly, Croft even fit into that. I know the last play of the season, everybody going to talk about that, but Croft is above average blocker his entire career at the tight end position. So these bigger bodied blocker type guys and tried to mold them into receivers, receiving tight ends. It hasn't worked. Hasn't worked. So they completely just about faced. And you go get this guy, Cameron Latu, that was the worst graded blocking tight end out of the entire drafted tight ends. But he's got willingness. But the thing that stands out about him, amazing hands, finds the soft spot in zones consistently, and is kind of a project raw player that was converted from defensive end. So I like the evolution. Not a lot of playing time for these rookies, maybe Ji'Ayir Brown, but still he's going to need an injury to kind of see the field. I don't think he could beat out Tayshaun Gibson. Jimmy Ward couldn't beat out Tayshaun Gibson. So I doubt Ji'Ayir Brown does that. I don't think they really want him to. I think they want him to learn and step in. He's the biggest impact player. The kicker pick, that gets a lot of publicity. I think it's a misuse of resources, but the Niners needed a kicker. And so they got one. They paid for him, the second highest drafted kicker in the past decade. So he's going to have to be pretty dang good to live up to that. But yeah, depth area, that's kind of what they did.
I agree. I mean, when you look at the initial ones, Jair Brown was a guy on my list. He was a guy who was on my draft list. I was looking at safeties in the area that I would select. Two of the safeties that I had high on my board went as I expected. One in the second round in Jartavius Martin, another in the early third round in Sidney Brown to the Eagles. That third guy that I was really eyeing when I was doing drafts and all that kind of different work was obviously Ji'Ayir Brown. And I was like, is he going to make it to 99? That's the big question because a lot of times I had to trade up to get my guy, and I was envisioning a trade up to get Jair Brown. More so, they did it. They got their guy. I think he's going to be a good fit, and I think he works well within this system for a variety of reasons, which we'll see in 2024, but maybe even in 2023, understanding these three safety packages that could allow for a little more aggression under Steve Wilkes. And so Jair Brown, I like that pick. The next two picks, not so much. I'll talk about Jake Moody. I mean, you talked about Cam Latu. I think he's a fine blocker because he's willing to do so. But overall, when you look at tight ends and the success rate that they've had, a lot of the success to really mold into strong tight ends comes from good athleticism, good work after the catch, and I mean solid hands, right? And I don't necessarily think having proven hands is the most necessary. You saw George Kittle come out, great athlete, a willing blocker, and a guy who had potential as a pass catcher. I was looking for a guy who could not necessarily be George Kittle, but be a guy who could develop into a tight end number one. I don't think Cam Latu has that potential for me. Right now, he's an all right blocker. His hands have an issue. You have an 11.1% drop rate, but he's not the best athlete. He's strong, just not the best athlete. I don't think that pans out well when you don't necessarily have the best hands, not the best athleticism, and not the best blocking. I think this is an average pick all around the board. And
Yeah.
I think that the 49ers might want that, obviously, as a tight end too. That might fit in well. But as a guy for the future, I don't necessarily think Cam Latu's that guy. I thought that there were, I, I looked yesterday, the four tight ends drafted after Cam Latu, I think I would have taken each of the four tight ends after. And the worst part is when you look at the board, the 49ers overdrafted at 99 or at 101. The next tight end was at 147, Josh Wiley to the
I
Indianapolis
love
Colts.
I love Josh Wiley, man.
And it happened a whole round after. You could have waited on the tight end position, and I don't buy that you couldn't have traded out of the pick when the first 3 or 4 picks in the fourth round got traded for significant value. The Eagles traded up into the fourth round, the early fourth round, to select, I believe, Tyler Steen, and they traded a third round pick in 2024 to do so. There was value to do so in that early third round. That's why I'm not too big of a fan of the pick, not only because of the player, but because also you reached. For the third consecutive year, you reached on a player in the third round. Two running backs the years before, and then obviously Jake Moody. It's just high. I didn't like the value for it. I understand why they might have done it. Don't like the reasoning. And as for the fact that the Patriots drafted a kicker 20 picks later, I think they also reached. That's if there
I
was no
agree
Moody, that's the
100%.
second highest that you've ever drafted. For those two picks to pan out, you've got to be top five kickers in the NFL. And I think that the learning curve from the NCAA to the NFL, it's steep. Moody, you look at his career average of an 82%. I know he had a really good 2021 at, I think it was like 92%. You look at his career average of 82%, you pin that to the NFL, that's a bottom 10 mark. Overall, I think there's just insurmountable expectations for Jake Moody coming in immediately. If he cracks them, great. That's a solid pick. But
That's what everybody wants.
obviously, it's a tough one. It's a tough one for me.
Yeah, and everybody's like, "Well, what if he's Justin Tucker?" And I'm like, "Well, Justin Tucker is an undrafted free agent." And yeah, if he is Justin Tucker, like that would be awesome. Would you be getting value? No. It's Justin Tucker or you lost. Like, and so that's rough. I hope he answers the call. I see Sid in the chat talk about Money Moody. I love it, and I hope that he excels, and I hope he's the kicker for the next decade. That's what the Niners need. And that would be awesome. I hope that's what it comes to about. But the funny thing is, like, I think this pick was dictated by the last pick that they used on the punter, the fourth
Right.
rounder on Mitch Wisnowski, who can't do kickoffs because he just doesn't have the leg. So I think you lost Gold because Gold's 40 plus. He don't want to do kickoffs. He's tiny. He hates it. He doesn't have the leg to do touchbacks very well either. So you kind of pigeonholed yourself based on the last punter pick. Now, I think Mitch was a borderline top 7 punter last year. Was he deserving of the second contract? I think he was this year. It was his best year by far, but it took him 3 years to be good, to be average. I think Mitch was below average first 3 years. So the previous pick was a crazy reach that forced your hand even more so here. Hopefully, Moody and Mitch are here for the long haul. I like both of them as people. I like their personalities. I like who they are. It's just, man, the Niners just invested so much there. Whenever other teams are trading up for, like you said, starting right tackles, starting corners, starting wide receivers, it's rough. It's a misuse of funds, but we got to see how it plans out. And Shanahan and Lynch have built up enough credit to get by with this. Just because I'm critical or you're critical doesn't mean we don't like the
Absolutely.
player or whatever else.
Absolutely.
It's just, it's okay to be critical of certain things. Doesn't mean I don't love this team or, the front office. I think they're better than almost anybody else in the NFL, but it's a head scratcher.
No, I agree. And I mean, this doesn't take away from my thoughts on either of the two or the way that the rest of this draft panned out. I liked a lot of the rest of the draft. It's just, you've got to talk about these two picks here because obviously they're the headliners when you start in the third
Yeah.
round. And I thought they went 1 for 3 right now in the third round just based on talent. And I do think that it's tough. And it's funny, somebody asked me, at least it wasn't a running back. I would have drafted Roshan Johnson at 99
Don't talk
over
to me
Jake
about my
Moody.
boy Roshan, man. I
I
love
mean,
that
I know
dude.
hook 'em horse there. I would have drafted Roshan Johnson at 99 over Jake Moody, and that's saying something.
Oh,
Understanding the value at running
oof.
back there. Just thought he's. I mean, that's just one example of a better prospect, in my opinion, at the board there.
You know what's crazy, and I will say this, is next year the 49ers will have 3 picks before the 87 pick. Now, depending on where the 49ers fit, but where we originally were slated 99, 101, 102, we'll have 4 picks before where we were slated to draft first last year. So
Yeah,
this questioning of third round picks, it would be a lot different if you had like an offensive tackle draft in the second round or a corner draft in the first round or whatever, these premium positions. And again, it's pretty easy to be critical of third round picks. There's a reason why they're third round players is because every team already passed on them at least twice. And so they're flawed prospects by nature. Doesn't mean they can't be great. Look at Brock Purdy. But yeah, next year is going to be fun. I'm very excited about all the draft capital this team has in the future.
Oh yeah, man. I think next year is going to be fun. And next year, I mean, we get a scout fully. It's the first time we'll get a first round pick. Obviously, no second round pick. We'll wait and see what happens there. Or no. We do have our second, right? Next year, we do
Yes,
have
we
our
do.
second because of the McCaffrey trade was this year,
Mhm.
and so we'll have a full arsenal of picks. And that's, I mean, and this is also not taken away from the third rounders that we're expected to grab with the two, I believe, from the coaching staff with D'Amico getting one. You'll get one for the back end of the last cycle, and then you'll also get one for Jimmy Garoppolo gets canceled, but you'll get one for Mike McGlinchey. So you should get
Correct.
three more third round picks next year,
It's awesome.
alongside a boatload of picks later on.
Gosh, man, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
But John, it's been a great talk. We talked about the quarterbacks, talked about the schedule, talked about the draft, talked about the recent players that have shined in the media. So it's been a fun show. Any last thoughts before we head on out today?
Yeah, man, Rohan, you're the best, dude. I always enjoy our times. You're really good at what you do. The one thing I do want to just put out there for my audience, we do have a Zoom hangout tonight for all our Patreon members. We got our watch party for the 49ers versus Cowboys 1994 game. We're going to be getting
Ah,
together 5:30 p.m. tonight. I'm about to go make the post right after I'm done here. And remember, 49ersrushroadtrip.com. Tickets available tomorrow.
no, definitely. Go ahead, check that out. All the Patreon members. If you're not subscribed to John Patreon, you've got a chance to do that before tonight. I mean, he puts out a lot of good content there as well, I'm sure. And a lot of people appreciate those film reviews. So, John, appreciate your work. Obviously, appreciate your time coming on today. For those of you guys on John's channel, check out the description. Be sure to subscribe to my channel as well. Really appreciate the support. We'll be back very soon. But if that's all, see you guys next time.